So the other day I was cleaning and reorganizing my makeup, and I have a drawer at like the bottom of my makeup collection where I have random products like lashes, maybe sponges, things that I don't really reach for a ton. And in the back of that drawer, I found the Too Faced Peach Powder. I had purchased a backup of it and apparently it just made its way to the back of the drawer. And I don't know how many of you have been around my channel this long, but back in the day, that was my favorite powder of all time. At some point they discontinued it, and even though it wasn't like officially announced, it was so hard to find it. And randomly, like you guys would see it stocked on the Too Faced website or somewhere, and you would message me and I would grab it because I loved it. I couldn't believe they were discontinuing it. And it just kind of got me thinking about all of my favorite products that have been discontinued over the years. There are so many of them because I've been filming videos for what feels like a million years. Like I can go back on my channel and see like a really old video featuring favorites, and like hardly any of those products exist anymore. And that is so sad. So anyway, I thought it'd be fun to kind of take a walk down memory lane, share some of my favorite products that have been discontinued that I would love to see brands bring back. I don't think I've done a video like this for a few years, so it was kind of fun to go back and just like think of all of my old school favorites. So let me know in the comments below, what is the #1 discontinued product that you could add to your list? Like if you could just snap your fingers and have a brand bring it back, what would it be? Okay, so let's start with the Too Faced Peach Powder, since that's what inspired today's video. I looked it up. They actually launched that in 2017. And I think a lot of the products in today's video are between like 2016 and 2018, like that really big makeup era when there were new launches every single week. Although there are new launches every single week these days, but that was such a fun time for makeup. Some of the products are older than that. But anyway, Too Faced did like a full peaches and cream collection. Honestly, it was so much fun looking through pictures of this collection because I forgot about a lot of these products when they did like a peach collection. I don't know if they launched these like separately or all together, but there was a Peach Perfect foundation, which I remember that, a fully matte palette, which was actually one of my favorites. They did a setting spray, lipsticks, blushes, liquid shadows, so many fun products. And honestly, I feel like if they were to launch this collection in 2025, it would probably do well, especially over on TikTok where people love like fun scented things, really cute packaging. And the packaging was super cute. I remember the products all smelled really good too. And I know not everyone is into like scented makeup products, and the peach powder definitely had a strong peach scent. But that powder was so good. It was just incredibly smoothing. It locked my makeup into place. I really didn't try anything else that really compared to it. So when they discontinued it, I was so sad. And if they were to relaunch it, I would totally pick it up. Thankfully, at this point, I have found other powders that I like just as much. I mean, the Huda Beauty one is great. Today, I'm actually wearing the new About Face powder, and I love it. I've used it like 2 or 3 times so far, and it's very beautiful. So there are other alternatives that I have found, so I can live without it, but I do miss it. Actually, another powder that I think I loved equally as much came out around the same time as that one, Urban Decay's Velvetizer. Do you guys remember that product? I used that as an under eye setting powder for years. And again, it was to the point where I would purchase it if I randomly saw it at like a TJ Maxx or Marshall's, because even after they discontinued it, they would still stock it randomly on the website. I don't know if they just like found stock in a warehouse or what, but so many of you loved that as well. It wasn't actually meant to be used as a setting powder or an under eye powder. They actually created it as like a mix-in. It was basically this like super fine kind of silky powder that you could pour into your liquid foundation or your cream foundation and mix it together. And it would kind of thicken up your foundation and create more of a velvety texture, which I would use it for that purpose sometimes, but I loved it for setting my under eye concealer. I just tried it one day. It worked so well, and my under eye concealer would not crease. It would not move. I almost think I missed that powder more than the Too Faced Peach Powder, because there are other powders I like for setting my whole face, but I used that powder to set my under eye concealer every single day. There was just something about it. It was so light, so silky, and it didn't feel like you were wearing powder and didn't look like you were wearing powder. I wish I could find that again in 2025 because I feel like I would still love it. Probably now even more than I did back then, because I definitely have more wrinkles under my eyes now. Okay, let's talk eyeshadow palettes. I still love a good eyeshadow palette, but the eyeshadow palette launches have slowed down so much in the last few years. Between like 2016 and 2020, there were new palettes launching every single week. And I had an eyeshadow palette obsession. It was out of hand. I think one year in there, I ended up buying and reviewing like 100 different palettes, which is so crazy to me at this point in time, because as much as I love eyeshadow palettes, I just can't imagine buying that many of them. And there were some really good launches, a lot of beautiful color stories. So if I had to choose a couple to bring back, I narrowed it down. Let's start with this one. I actually think this would be really relevant in 2025 because it was a fully shimmer palette. So I don't know how many of you remember this, but ColourPop was actually sold at Sephora for like a minute. This was before they were even available at Ulta. I think they were kind of like testing the waters to see if ColourPop could be successful at Sephora. So in 2017, they did like limited edition holiday launches that were sold exclusively at Sephora. And I think they had two different palettes. But the one that I remember the most is the Golden State of Mind palette. So it was $26, which was actually really pricey for ColourPop at the time because they were just selling their products directly on their website. And I don't know that they did a palette quite this big. This was a long time ago, so I can't remember. But interestingly enough, I was looking on their website. They just launched a 15-pan palette a couple weeks ago, The Shadow of Secrets, and that one's 23. So in 2017, they had the same size palette for more of an expensive price. So anyway, I don't know how successful this launch was because ColourPop never ended up getting sold at Sephora permanently. They went to Ulta, which just seems to be a better move overall. But this palette was really, really beautiful. At the time, I wonder if it was just because it was a fully shimmer palette that people weren't really as into it. And people love shimmers these days. I mean, not to say they didn't like them back then, but I feel like a fully shimmer palette isn't really that out of the ordinary in 2025. Or I guess wouldn't be that weird. And I don't know that ColourPop has even done a fully shimmer palette since they did this one, but this one had some really beautiful colors in it. A lot of neutrals, a couple of smokier tones, and I don't know that I need like a 15-pan palette of shimmers, but even like a really pretty 9-pan palette with ColourPop's shimmer formula, I think would be just a nice addition to have. They have a fully matte palette, or they did at one time, so a fully shimmer palette might be nice to see, and if they brought this back or did like an updated version of it, I probably would try it out. Okay, this was one of my favorite palettes of all time, and if they brought this back, I would buy it instantly, no question. The Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. So this came out in 2019. I ended up decluttering it at some point between then and now because mine got a little bit older. Like the metallic shadows were not performing the same after a few years. This was a collaboration palette between Dose of Colors and then Desi and Katie. I can't remember if it was a full collection or if it was just a palette. I'll be sure to insert some photos as I'm talking about these products, but it had 5 matte shadows and then 5 kind of like, if I remember right, like gritty metallic shadows, which doesn't sound that nice, but they looked amazing on the eyes. They were so like multi-dimensional, absolutely gorgeous, and you could create colorful looks or more neutral looks. There were also pink tones that were so pretty, and at the time, I was super into like green eyeshadow looks, blue eyeshadow looks, so I loved using the metallics in that palette specifically. Is Dose of Colors still around? I feel like I haven't heard much about them. I know they used to do like 5-pan matte palettes that were pretty popular back in the day, and then their liquid lipsticks were a big hit. So many people loved those. So I haven't heard much about them over the last few years. Let me check. It looks like they're still around and they are still making products. They're still doing those like 5-pan matte shadows, but unfortunately the Friendcation palette is not on their website. There were like some other collabs on there, so I was like scrolling through hoping I would just maybe randomly see it, but unfortunately it is no longer available. Without a doubt, one of the best palettes I ever tried, like one of my top favorite palettes of all time, was the Jackie Aina Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. This came out in 2019 and the quality was just so good. I had tried pretty much every Anastasia Beverly Hills palette leading up to that one, and I was a fan of the brand. Like they were just one of the it brands when it came to eyeshadow palettes. And then they launched that palette and there was something about the formula that just felt even better than all of the previous palettes. It wasn't really as powdery. The shadows were kind of like a little bit creamier, very silky, and the color story that Jackie did was amazing. Even though that palette was really colorful, I felt like it was really easy to create just very cohesive looks. And it was just so much fun. Like every time I used that palette, it just put me in a good mood. So that was definitely one of the best palettes I tried. Anastasia Beverly Hills' best palette ever, in my opinion. Urban Decay actually had a lot of really beautiful, interesting palettes over the years. I think last time I filmed this video, which was probably years ago at this point, but I remember a ton of the comments said that you guys wanted Urban Decay to bring back the Born to Run palette. Do you remember that one? That was a palette that was just like a good staple everyday palette because it had a lot of shadows in it, but it was super sleek. I loved the packaging because even though it had a ton of shadows, it wasn't like super bulky or uncomfortable to hold. I remember I would actually bring it with me when I traveled because it did have neutrals and it had some colorful tones in it too, and the quality was really, really nice. So that one popped into my mind. but I just was thinking about like Urban Decay holiday palettes from that time period. They did a lot of beautiful, just like very colorful, very vibrant palettes. I actually feel like Urban Decay was kind of ahead of the game. Like they were collaborating with, weren't they doing like movie collaborations back in the day? I know it's kind of popular now for brands to collaborate with like a TV show or a movie. That was actually a thing like a million years ago. And when I was first getting into makeup, I remember Urban Decay would do like limited edition holiday collabs. Am I making this up? I swear they had a Wicked palette like years and years ago. Now I have to look. I just thought of this. Yes, I remember this collection. What year was this? 2013. That was so long ago. So they did the Oz Great and Powerful collection. There was like a Glinda inspired palette and then also an Elphaba inspired palette. Okay, here's an article. These came out in 2013. I knew they did like some sort of Wizard of Oz collaboration, but I could not remember it. It almost feels like a weird dream because this was so long ago. But like this is way back in the day when I first started filming YouTube videos. And I remember everyone being so excited about this. So, oh no, I thought they did an Elphaba palette and a Glinda palette, but they did a Theodora palette and a Glinda palette. And I miss like that old school Urban Decay vibe. I will say over like the last year, I don't know. I'm trying to think what have they launched that's been new? I just feel like they've kind of had a little bit of a resurgence because everyone's into the moon dust shadows. But you know what? Last year they did the Face Bond foundation, which people really loved. I've been hearing good things about the Face Bond luminizer. So I feel like Urban Decay is a brand that I root for just because way back in the day when I first started getting into makeup, they were so big and I remember loving so many of their products. So anyway, I just think like a lot of old school Urban Decay products would be fun. It'd be fun if they brought them back and kind of did like a new spin on them. A few brands that closed down that I really miss that I wish could make a comeback, even though it isn't likely, Bite Beauty. Bite Beauty's lip products were so good. I actually still have a few of their matte lip crayons and I just can't get rid of them. There's one shade in particular, Cava, that is like my favorite cooler toned lipstick. I actually haven't worn it in a long time, but I'm holding on to it because Bite Beauty still has their lip lab. So one of these days I'm going to visit the lip lab and get like a lipstick in that color so that they can just create like a new one for me because their lip lab actually allows you to like create custom colors. And I keep saying I'm going to go there, but we haven't been to New York City in forever, which is so sad. Before we had kids, we used to go all the time. That was like pre-pandemic. But anyway, I think they have them in like different areas of the country as well. But I definitely want to take in Cava and recreate that one. But I loved their lipsticks so much. They had the best formulas. They were creamy and comfortable. They stayed in place well. They also did lip glosses. Eventually they kind of expanded and they had like a foundation, a powder, a mascara. But I think because the brand was like lip product focused for so long, once they tried to create other products, they didn't necessarily take off as well. And then in 2020, people just weren't buying lip products as a whole. So it's really sad that they closed down, but thankfully they were able to pivot and they have the lip lab and that seems to be doing well. Whenever I see a post on social media, it still just looks like a really fun place to visit. So one of these days I am going to go there. The other brand I really miss is Becca. Becca closed in 2021 and thankfully you can still get your hands on their highlighters. Those were my absolute favorite and they still sell those and the under eye corrector through Smashbox, which they are available on Sephora's website and I think Ulta's website as well, but they don't launch any new additional products. I actually really miss their blushes. And again, I think they would almost be more relevant now in 2025. Blush is still going strong. Like every single brand is still launching new blush products. And as we head into 2025, I think we're going to see even more blurring matte blushes. It seems like that's the direction brands are going back to. And Becca's blushes were so good. They were like these smooth, creamy powders that applied beautifully to the skin. They also had like a glowy version that looked amazing. And I just feel like if Becca was still around and those products were still available, they probably, I mean, maybe they would be like an older, forgotten about product, but if they came back and relaunched those, I think they would do so well this year. Okay, this is probably the oldest launch I'm talking about in today's video, but the Revlon lip butters. These came out in 2011, which is actually the year I filmed my first YouTube video. I have a video on my channel where I was like talking about these and I clicked on it just for like to see what I was saying about them. And it's so weird because those had actually gone like absolutely viral before viral was a thing. So in 2011, there was no TikTok. There was Instagram around yet. I don't know if it was, but even if it was, it's not what it is today. So it's funny because I think those basically went viral because of blogs and because of YouTube. Everyone was buying them, everyone was talking about them. And this was when you would like actually go to the drugstore and search for the newest product. And I would go to every drugstore in my town looking for these, and they were sold out everywhere. They were so nice. They were just like creamy and smooth. The packaging was so pretty. They looked beautiful on the lips. I had a bunch of shades that I ended up loving and wearing nonstop. And that really was one of my favorite products back in the day. I don't purchase from Revlon anymore because they're not cruelty free. So if they did bring them back, sadly, I wouldn't end up buying them. But that product, I remember loving it so, so much back in the day. And I wonder why they ended up discontinuing those, why they're not available anymore. Another old school product, the Maybelline tattoos. What were they called? Like the eye tattoos. Do you remember those? They launched in 2012. And again, it was a product that I remember like going into the drugstore for and searching and like trying to find every color because I loved them so much. It's funny because thinking about them now, I was like, those were just cream eyeshadows, but they were so good for like one and done eyeshadow looks. They were amazing as eyeshadow bases. And then eventually they ended up launching like additional colors, and those were so popular. And I just kind of missed those days. Like 2011, back in the day when a new product launched and like going to the drugstore and like seeing the display for the first time and like trying to hunt it down at different drugstores. Part of me is glad we don't have to do that anymore and we can just buy things online when we want them. But that is like the time period where I really fell in love with makeup. So I feel like when I think back on those, it makes me happy to think about them. Actually, e.l.f. did a cream shadow. They did the smudge pots. Do you remember those? I loved those so much. They weren't the exact same as the Maybelline eye tattoos. I feel like e.l.f.'s formula was a little bit creamier, but I checked randomly, like maybe a year ago, and they don't have those anymore. I think they have a cream eyeshadow, or they did. I'm pretty sure. And I tried it and it wasn't the same. It was kind of dry. It wasn't great. So I would love for e.l.f. to bring back their smudge pots. What else do I have on my list? Oh, the Smashbox Vlada collection. That was one of the prettiest collections ever. And again, I feel like Smashbox is not super relevant these days. Like they have some new launches, they have some staple products people love, but they don't do a lot of like super interesting products or collections as a whole. And they used to do really beautiful collections with like gorgeous packaging, really fun, interesting products. And they did this Petal Metal collection. And I had one of the highlighters in my makeup collection for years and years because I could not get rid of it. Not only was the outer packaging so beautiful, the texture of the highlighter was amazing. And I just feel like they don't make makeup products like that anymore with like really pretty packaging, really nice formulas. And I don't know if I'm just like romanticizing them in my head because I'm feeling nostalgic about them, but I do remember them doing that collection. And then they also did this like crystal collection, which was so pretty too. And just kind of fun and interesting, something a little bit different. And we don't see that from Smashbox anymore. Another brand that did a lot of fun collections, which I kind of touched on in the beginning, was Too Faced. And I know Too Faced was never like everyone's absolute favorite brand because sometimes the quality was kind of hit and miss. But you know what collection I loved? The Tutti Frutti collection. That collection was so cute. They actually did these like blush highlighter duos that were so pretty, so fun. And again, the packaging was just really cute. I mean, I try not to buy products based on like cute packaging anymore, just because I do care more about the actual quality of the product. But it just feels like makeup was so much fun back then, and brands weren't necessarily afraid to do something that wasn't going to be the next viral hit. They just did like a fun collection from time to time, which maybe they learned from those days and those collections didn't actually do as well as I remember, but they were fun. And I kind of look back and think of like just those cute little powders I had in my collection. The banana powder, I loved that one so much. So I'm glad I found that Too Faced powder in the back of my drawer because it just kind of brought back all of the memories of old products that I loved so, so much. Again, I would love to know which products you would love to see brands bring back or kind of put a spin on in 2025. I feel like so many of these products could do really, really well in 2025, especially as we're seeing like more matte products, a lot of blurring products, blushes, complexion launches. It almost seems like some of the 2016, 2018 trends are on their way back in. That's how it always works, right? But I will say, you know, overall, makeup has come such a long way. And a lot of those products, I'm like, oh, I loved them. I missed them so, so much. But I almost think if I tried those formulas now in 2025, I might not love them as much as I remember. Like makeup really is so good these days, and it's very rare I mean, it definitely happens, but it's rare that you try a product that is like a terrible quality formula. Whereas back in the day, that definitely happened a little bit more often. So even though I miss a lot of these products, I'm glad formulas have improved and brands are putting out higher quality products. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. I will see you very soon with a new one. Bye.